It was past midnight when the power went out, not in a dramatic way, with flickering lights or thunder, but in a quiet, suffocating darkness that felt deliberate, as if someone had gently turned the world off. I was alone in my apartment on the 14th floor of an old residential building, the kind where the walls were thin, the elevator groaned like it was dying, and the hallway lights buzzed even when everything else was silent. But now, even the buzzing was gone, and all I had was the weak glow of my phone screen and the heavy presence of the dark pressing in from every corner. Outside the window, the city had gone strangely still. No horns, no distant traffic, no drunken laughter from the street below. Just silence, thick and unnatural. And then, somewhere in the building, a door creaked open. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, like it wanted to be heard. And I sat up in bed, listening, my heart thudding softly in my chest as footsteps echoed in the hallway. 1, 2, 3, heavy and unhurried, stopping right outside my door, and I held my breath, waiting for the handle to move, waiting for a knock that never came. Just the presence of someone standing there. And after a moment, the footsteps continued down the hall, fading into the darkness, leaving behind a silence that felt even heavier than before. My phone battery died soon after, taking the last bit of light with it, and I lay there in complete darkness, eyes wide open, listening to the building breathe, the pipes groaning softly, the walls creaking like tired bones, until, much later, the footsteps returned. But this time they moved differently, dragging across the floor. Scrape, pause, scrape, as if something heavy was being pulled. And the sound stopped outside the apartment across from mine, apartment 14B, the one that had been empty for months, ever since the previous tenant left after complaining about noises at night. And I heard its door creak open, filling the hallway with a damp, rotten smell, like wet concrete mixed with something old and decayed. And then the door closed again, but the smell didn't leave. It seeped through the walls, through the cracks in my door, and into my lungs, making me pull my blanket over my face, my heart pounding in my ears as I whispered to myself, "It's just an old building, just old pipes, just my imagination." The next morning, sunlight poured through my curtains like nothing had happened. The city noise returned, cars honking, vendors shouting, life moving on. And when I stepped into the hallway, I noticed apartment 14B's door was slightly open, the air around it unnaturally cold. And when I leaned closer, I saw that the apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no lights, just bare concrete walls, except for the floor, where wet footprints trailed from the door to the far wall and then simply stopped, as if whoever had made them had walked into the wall itself and disappeared. And a chill ran down my spine as I backed away and locked my own door twice, telling myself it was a prank, a leak, anything but what my mind was suggesting. That night, the power went out again, and this time the footsteps came straight to my door, the handle turning slowly, painfully, and I realized with horror that I hadn't locked it, and the door opened just an inch, revealing a hallway darker than the inside of my apartment, shadows swallowing what little light there was, and a shape stood there, tall, thin, wrong, with no face, just a smooth, pale surface where features should have been, its body bending unnaturally, like its bones were made of rubber, and it tilted its head as if listening, as if smelling me, and I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, and when its mouth opened where a mouth shouldn't exist, it whispered, "You left the light on," and the door slammed shut on its own as the power suddenly returned, leaving me alone in my apartment, shaking, while the rotten smell lingered in the air. After that, I heard it every night, walking, dragging, breathing outside my door, sometimes knocking, sometimes whispering, sometimes laughing softly, and sometimes standing perfectly still, just waiting. And apartment 14B remains empty to this day. But something lives there. Something that knows when you're alone. Something that knows when the lights go out. And every night, when the building falls silent, I still hear it. Scrape, pause, scrape, right outside my door. And I lie there in the darkness, whispering to myself, "Please don't open it. Please don't open it. Please don't open it." The hostel was never truly quiet at night, but on that particular evening I was the only one left in my room, every other bed empty, every locker closed, and the silence felt thick, as if the walls were listening. And as I lay on my narrow mattress, watching the ceiling fan spin slowly above me, I tried to convince myself that being alone was better than noisy roommates. But around 1 in the morning, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway, stopping right outside my door, and the handle moved slightly, as if someone was testing it, though the door never opened. And when the footsteps finally faded away, the room felt colder than before. And I heard the top bunk across from me creak, even though it had been empty all evening, and the mattress dipped as if someone had just sat down, and my heart raced as I stared at the empty bed and heard slow, wet breathing, like air passing through something broken, and I whispered, "There's no one there. You're just imagining it." And the breathing stopped, the mattress rose, and the room went still. And the next day, I laughed it off as exhaustion. But that night, the footsteps returned, heavier than before. The door creaked open by itself, and the air grew cold as the bed across from me sank deeply again, and a damp, whispering voice spoke from the darkness. "You took my bed." And I pulled my blanket to my chin and whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." And the room fell silent. And later, I learned that a student had died there after falling from the top bunk. And since then, no one stayed in that bed for more than a night. And even when I moved my mattress to the floor, the footsteps still came, the breathing still filled the room, and a cold breath brushed my ear as the voice whispered, "The floor is mine too." And when I woke up the next morning, my mattress was back on the bed, and the top bunk was neatly made, as if someone had slept there all night, and I checked out immediately. But sometimes, when I lie in bed, I still hear that slow breathing in the dark and whisper, "I didn't take your bed. I swear I didn't." The cottage sat alone at the edge of the forest, far from the nearest road, surrounded by tall trees that blocked out most of the moonlight. And on my first night there, the silence felt too deep, like the woods were holding their breath. And as I lay on the old wooden bed, listening to the wind brush against the walls, I told myself the creaking sounds were just the house settling. But sometime after midnight, I heard slow footsteps on the porch, heavy and wet, stopping right outside the door. And I froze as the handle turned slightly and then went still. And when the footsteps faded away, the air inside the cottage grew colder, and from the corner of the room, I heard a soft, dripping sound, even though there was no leak. And then a faint whisper crawled through the darkness. "You shouldn't be here." And my chest tightened as I whispered back, "I'll leave in the morning." But the whisper laughed softly, and the floorboards near the bed began to creak as if something invisible was moving closer. And the smell of damp earth filled the air, thick and heavy. And I pulled the blanket over my head as the voice spoke again. "The forest doesn't let people leave." And something cold brushed against my ankle, making me gasp. And when I finally fell into a restless sleep, I dreamed of roots wrapping around the cottage, pulling it slowly into the ground. And when I woke up at dawn, muddy footprints circled the bed, leading to the door, but never away from it. And even now, when the wind is quiet and the night feels too still, I hear that whisper in my ears. "You're still here."